Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the starship Defiant, watching her world fall apart. Through the large viewing screen, she could see the enemy ships moving closer. They looked like metal insects with sharp edges and glowing red lights. The Kethvar fleet had been hunting humans across the galaxy for 3 years now, and they were very good at it. "Admiral, we have lost contact with the mining station on Kepler 442b, reported Lieutenant Torres from his station. His young face looked tired and scared. Everyone on the bridge looked that way these days. Sarah nodded slowly. Another human colony was gone. The Kethvar did not take prisoners. They did not want to talk or make deals. They just wanted humans dead, and they had the ships and weapons to make it happen. The Defiant shook as enemy fire hit their shields. Sarah grabbed the rail to keep from falling. The ship's lights flickered, and she heard the sound of metal bending somewhere deep in the hull. "Shield strength at 40%, called out the weapons officer. "We cannot take much more of this." Sarah looked at the tactical display. 15 human ships were left from the original fleet of 60. The Kethvar had brought over 200 ships to this battle. The math was simple and terrible. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she said into her communicator. "Form up behind the Defiant. We are going to try to buy the colony ships time to escape." She knew it was hopeless. The enemy ships were faster and stronger. Their weapons could punch through human shields like paper. Their own weapons barely scratched the alien hulls. Captain Williams of the cruiser Phoenix appeared on her screen. His ship had burn marks across its hull and smoke was visible behind him. "Admiral, my engines are failing. I don't think we can keep up." "Do what you can, Captain," Sarah replied. "Every minute we hold them here is another minute for civilians to get away." The truth was that there were not many places left to run. Earth had gone silent 3 months ago. Nobody knew what had happened there, but everyone feared the worst. The other human colonies were falling one by one. Soon there would be nowhere left to hide. Sarah remembered when humans first met the Kethvar 5 years ago. The aliens seemed interested in trade and friendship. Human diplomats had been excited about joining a galactic community. Then the attack started. Whole colonies disappeared overnight. Human ships were destroyed without warning. It turned out the Kethvar saw humans as a disease that needed to be removed from the galaxy. They said humans were too violent and dangerous to be allowed to spread among the stars. The irony was not lost on Sarah as she watched their warships destroy everything in their path. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt," Torres suddenly announced. His voice had changed from tired to confused. Sarah turned to look at him. "What kind of energy signatures? I'm not sure. It's like nothing in our database. The readings are off the charts." On the tactical display, new contacts started appearing. They were coming from the asteroid field where nothing should have been hiding. The contacts were big, whatever they were. "It could be Kethvar reinforcements," suggested the weapons officer. Sarah felt her stomach drop. If the enemy had more ships coming, this would be over very quickly. She watched the contacts move on the screen, waiting to see what fresh nightmare was approaching. But something was wrong. The new ships were not moving like Kethvar vessels. They moved in patterns that seemed almost familiar, like human flight formations, but smoother and more precise. "Torres, can you get a visual on those contacts?" "Working on it, Admiral. The interference from the asteroid field is making it difficult." The Kethvar seemed to notice the new arrivals too. Their attack on the human fleet slowed as they turned some of their attention to the mysterious newcomers. Suddenly, the main screen flickered and cleared. Sarah could see a ship emerging from behind a large asteroid. Her breath caught in her throat. It was human. There was no mistaking the basics: design, the way the hull was shaped, the placement of the engines, but it was also completely different from any human ship she had ever seen. It was huge, at least a kilometer long, and its surface seemed to bend light around it in strange ways. "That's impossible," whispered Captain Williams over the communication channel. No human ship was ever built like that. The mysterious ship moved with grace that seemed to defy physics. It flowed through space like water, avoiding asteroids that should have torn it apart. As it got closer, Sarah could see that its hull was covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel, Torres reported. Put it through. The main screen switched to show the bridge of the mystery ship. Sarah found herself looking at a man in a human uniform she did not recognize. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and scars on his face that spoke of hard battles. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Marcus Reed of the starship Phantom's Edge, the man said. His voice was calm and confident in a way that Sarah had not heard from any human in years. We're here to help. Sarah stared at him. Captain Reed, that's impossible. Marcus Reed died 20 years ago during the first alien contact incident. The man on the screen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. We've been away for a while learning new tricks. It's time to show these Kethvar what humans can really do when we put our minds to it. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Phantom's Edge was moving toward the enemy fleet. Alone. One ship against 200. Captain Reed, you need to fall back. The enemy has overwhelming numbers. Reed's smile got wider. Admiral, you're thinking like someone who still believes in fair fights. We stopped believing in those a long time ago. The transmission ended. Sarah watched as the impossible ship accelerated toward the Kethvar fleet. She found herself holding her breath, waiting to see what would happen when the mysterious vessel met the alien warships. The Kethvar seemed to view the single ship as either brave or stupid. Several of their smaller vessels broke formation to intercept it. Their weapons lit up space with deadly energy beams. But something strange happened. The beams passed right through the Phantom's Edge, as if it was not really there. The human ship kept coming, untouched by weapons that should have destroyed it instantly. What just happened? Sarah asked nobody in particular. Torres was frantically working at his station. Admiral, the readings from that ship are impossible. It's like it exists in several places at once. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever Marcus Reed had become, whatever his ship really was, the war was about to change in ways she could not imagine. The Phantom's Edge moved through space like a hunting cat. Captain Marcus Reed stood on his bridge, watching the Kethvar ships try to understand what they were seeing. His crew worked quietly around him, each person focused on their job with the calm of experienced fighters. Weapons ready, Captain, reported his tactical officer, a woman named Lisa Park. She had been with Reed since the beginning, since the day their ship had been pulled into the dimensional fold. That was 20 years ago for the outside universe, but for Reed and his crew, it had been much longer. Not yet, Reed said. Let them get closer. I want them to think they have a chance. The bridge of the Phantom's Edge looked both human and alien at the same time. The basic layout was familiar, but the controls and displays showed information that should not have been possible. Screens showed views of space from angles that did not exist, and the ship's computer could calculate things that broke the normal rules of math. Reed remembered the day his ship had disappeared from normal space. They had been fighting a losing battle against an alien scout force. His ship was damaged and his crew was dying. Then something had gone wrong with their experimental drive system, and suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. The place they found themselves in was not quite another dimension and not quite the same universe. Time moved differently there. Physics worked by different rules. At first, Reed and his crew had just tried to survive and find a way home. But as years passed, they began to understand their new environment and learn from it. Captain, the Kethvar are moving into attack formation, Park reported. They're treating us like a standard human vessel. Reed smiled. The enemy had no idea what they were about to face. During their time in the fold, Reed's crew had learned to build weapons that used the strange physics of their prison. They had created armor that could exist in multiple places at once. They had found ways to make their ship phase in and out of reality. Admiral Chen is trying to contact us, said the communications officer. Put her through. Admiral Chen appeared on the main screen. She looked worried and confused. Captain Reed, please fall back. You're outnumbered 200 to 1. Admiral, with respect, you're thinking in old terms, Reed replied. Numbers only matter if you're fighting by the old rules. He turned to his crew. All stations prepare for combat. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every human who died while we were away. The first HFY ships opened fire. Bright energy beams lanced through space toward the Phantom's edge. Reed watched calmly as the deadly weapons passed through his ship without causing any damage. Phase shifting complete, Park announced. We're riding between dimensions. Their weapons can't touch us while we're shifted. Reed nodded. This was the first lesson they had learned in the fold. If the enemy played by one set of rules, you found a way to play by different rules entirely. The HFY weapons were designed to destroy things that existed completely in normal space. The Phantom's edge was only partially there. Take us into the middle of their formation, Reed ordered. The ship moved forward with impossible grace. HFY vessels tried to ram it, but the Phantom's edge flowed around them like water. The alien captains must have been going crazy trying to understand what was happening. We're in position, Captain, the pilot announced. Good. Now let's show them what we learned in the dark. Reed turned to Park. Weapons free, full dimensional spread. The Phantom's edge opened fire with weapons that should not have existed. Beams of twisted space-time reached out and touched the HFY ships. Where the beams hit, the alien vessels began to tear themselves apart from the inside as their own gravity fields turned against them. One HFY cruiser tried to escape, but a missile from the Phantom's edge followed it through a fold in space and emerged inside the enemy ship's hull. The cruiser exploded from within, its pieces scattering across space. Direct hit on their command ship, Park reported with satisfaction. Their flagship is losing power. Reed watched as the HFY fleet began to panic. Ships that had been advancing in perfect formation now scattered in all directions. Their commanders were shouting orders that made no sense because their enemy was doing things that made no sense. The communications officer spoke up. Captain, we're getting transmission attempts from the HFY fleet. They want to talk. Not yet, Reed said. They need to understand the new reality before they're ready to listen. Another group of HFY ships tried a coordinated attack, firing all their weapons at once. The energy beams created a web of destruction that should have vaporized anything in their path. But the Phantom's edge split itself across multiple dimensions existing in 7 places at once. The weapons hit 6 empty spots and missed the real ship entirely. The return fire from the Phantom's edge was even more devastating. Quantum torpedoes phased through the enemy shields and exploded inside their reactors. Energy beams that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously carved through hulls that were only protected in 3. Admiral Chen is hailing us again, the communications officer reported. Reed looked at the tactical display. The HFY fleet was in complete chaos. Ships were exploding or fleeing in all directions. The perfect formation that had been crushing human resistance was now a scattered mess of confused and terrified aliens. Put the Admiral through. Chen appeared on screen again, but this time she looked amazed instead of worried. Captain, how are you doing this? What happened to your ship? We spent 20 years learning that the universe is much bigger and stranger than anyone imagined, Reed replied. The HFY think they're the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they've only explored a tiny fraction of what's possible. Behind him, Park called out another victory. 3 more enemy cruisers destroyed, Captain. Their remaining ships are trying to retreat. Reed turned back to Chen. Admiral, this is just the beginning. The Phantom's edge is not alone. We left signals for others who were lost like us. They should be arriving soon. Chen looked confused. Others? Every human ship that disappeared during the war, every crew that was presumed dead, every mission that vanished without a trace. We weren't destroyed, Admiral. We were being prepared. On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout the system. Ships emerged from hiding places that should not have existed. Each vessel looked different, each one impossible in its own way. Reed smiled as he watched his scattered fleet return to normal space. The HFY had thought they were fighting humans. They were about to learn that they had been fighting children. The real human fleet was just getting started. The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the impossible human ships tore through the HFY fleet like wolves among sheep. What she was seeing broke every rule of space, combat she had ever learned. The Darwin's hammer emerged from a fold in space that opened like a flower. The ship looked like it was made of living metal that moved and shifted as she watched. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the communication screen with a smile that was all teeth. "Good to see you're still fighting the good fight, Chen," Vasquez said. Her ship was already moving toward a group of Kethvar destroyers. "We've been working on some new tricks. Want to see biological warfare done right?" Before Chen could answer, the Darwin's hammer released a cloud of what looked like silver dust. The cloud drifted toward the enemy ships, seeming harmless and slow. But when it touched the first Kethvar vessel, something terrible happened. The alien ship began to change. Its hull started growing strange growths and twisting into new shapes. The Kethvar inside were screaming over their communication channels as their own ship turned against them. In minutes, what had been a proud warship became a twisted mass of metal and flesh that could no longer function. "We taught their ships to evolve," Vasquez explained cheerfully. "Unfortunately for them, we also taught them to evolve wrong." Another ship appeared, the Probability Zero, commanded by Captain Jiang Wei. His vessel looked normal until Chen realized it was flickering in and out of existence. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it was not, but it kept firing weapons regardless of whether it existed at the moment. "Jiang, how are you shooting while you don't exist?" Chen asked over the communication channel. Jiang laughed. "Simple. I calculate the probability of my weapons hitting the target, then I make that probability equal to 100%. The universe has to make it happen, even if I'm not technically there to pull the trigger." Chen shook her head. "That's impossible." "Impossible is just another word for something nobody has figured out how to do yet," Jiang replied. As if to prove his point, his ship fired a missile at a Kethvar battleship. The missile hit and exploded even though Chen was certain the Probability Zero had not existed at the moment it was fired. More ships kept appearing. Each one was stranger than the last. The Quantum Dancer phased through enemy hulls and fired from inside their shields. The Time Walker attacked enemy ships before they had decided to shoot, destroying them in the past to prevent future damage. The Reality Breaker simply pointed at targets and made them stop existing. The Kethvar fleet was falling apart. These aliens had conquered dozens of worlds with superior technology and overwhelming firepower. They had never faced an enemy that refused to accept the basic rules of how the universe worked. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Schrödingers." "Cat," came another voice. "We're reading massive enemy reinforcements incoming. Looks like the Kethvar called for backup." Chen looked at her tactical display. Rodriguez was right. More red contacts were appearing at the edge of the system. Hundreds of new enemy ships, including some of the largest vessels she had ever seen. The Kethvar were bringing their full might to bear. "Captain Reed, do you see the reinforcements?" Chen asked. Reed's voice came back calm and steady. "We see them, Admiral, but they're too late. The rules have already changed." Chen watched as the human ships moved into new formations. They were not spreading out to meet the incoming threat. Instead, they were clustering together in patterns that made no tactical sense. "What are you doing?" she asked. "We're going to show the Kethvar what happens when you fight humans who have had 20 years to get creative," Reed replied. The clustered human ships began to glow with energy that hurt to look at directly. Space around them started to twist and bend. Chen realized they were doing something to reality itself. Captain Park of the Entropy Engine appeared on screen. "Admiral, you might want to move your fleet back. This is going to get messy." Chen gave the order for her ships to retreat to a safe distance. She watched as the impossible human vessels continued their strange ritual. The space between them, filled with crackling energy that seemed to exist in colors that had no names. The incoming Kethvar fleet was massive and confident. Their ships moved in perfect formation, ready to overwhelm the small human force with sheer numbers. They had no idea what they were flying into. "Dimensional cascade is ready," Reed announced. "All ships prepare for universe revision." Chen did not understand what those words meant, but she felt a chill anyway. On her sensors, the space around the human ships was showing readings that made no sense. According to her instruments, there were negative energy levels, imaginary distances, and probability fields that added up to more than 100%. The Kethvar reinforcements arrived in normal space, just as the human ships completed their preparation. For a moment, both fleets faced each other across the empty void. Then the humans struck. What happened next was not an attack in any conventional sense. The clustered human ships reached out with invisible hands and began rewriting the local laws of physics. In the space where the Kethvar fleet existed, gravity started flowing backward. Energy weapons began firing their own ammunition. Time moved in spirals instead of straight lines. Kethvar ships found themselves shooting at their own past positions. Their engines pushed them toward their destinations and away from them at the same time. Their shields protected their enemies, instead of themselves. "We're not just fighting them," Reed explained as his fleet worked its impossible magic. "We're changing the rules so that fighting us becomes meaningless." Chen watched as the proud Kethvar armada descended into chaos. Ships collided with themselves across different timelines. Weapons fired backward through time and destroyed their own ships before they could shoot. Entire squadrons became trapped in loops where they were always arriving but never quite there. In less than an hour, the most powerful fleet the Kethvar had ever assembled was reduced to scattered debris and confused survivors. The humans had not just won the battle, they had made it impossible for the battle to have been lost. "Admiral Chen," Reed said as his ships began to return to normal configurations, "I think it's time we had a talk with the Kethvar leadership. They need to understand that this war is over, and they lost it the moment they decided humans were their enemy." Chen looked at the tactical display, now showing the scattered remains of 2 Kethvar fleets. She realized that everything had changed. The humans were no longer the underdogs fighting for survival. They had become something else, entirely, something that could reshape reality itself to ensure victory. The war was indeed over. The Kethvar just did not know it yet. Across human space, dormant beacons that had been silent for decades suddenly came to life. The signals they sent were strange and complex, using codes that most people had forgotten existed. But some remembered. Hidden bases throughout the galaxy began responding to the calls. Admiral Chen stood in the war room of the Defiant, looking at a star map that showed the entire human region of space. Red dots marked where beacon signals were activating. There were dozens of them, then hundreds, scattered across systems that had been written off as lost or empty. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all our remaining colonies," Lieutenant Torres announced. "Ships are appearing everywhere, big ones." Chen nodded. Captain Reed had warned her this would happen, but seeing it was different from hearing about Dorsanter. Each red dot on the map represented another impossible ship returning from whatever strange places they had been hiding. The communication screen lit up with incoming calls from across human space. Captain Sarah Kim of the colony ship New Hope was first. "Admiral Chen, you need to see this," Kim said. Her face was excited and afraid at the same time. "There's a ship in our system that's the size of a small moon. It just appeared out of nowhere." More calls came in rapid succession. Captain Martinez reported a vessel that looked like it was made of living crystal. Commander Johnson described a ship that seemed to exist in 12 dimensions at once. Captain Williams saw something that appeared to be built from captured black holes. Reed's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, I think it's time for you to see what humanity has really been doing during this war." Chen authorized a data link between the Defiant and the Phantom's Edge. Suddenly her screens filled with information about ships and crews that should not have existed. The files showed impossible technologies and strategies that hurt her head to think about. The Darwin's hammer had spent its exile learning to create biological weapons that could think and adapt faster than any computer. Captain Vasquez and her crew had turned evolution itself into a weapon of war. The Probability Zero had discovered how to manipulate quantum mechanics on a massive scale. Captain Zhang could calculate the exact chance of any event happening, and then force that chance to be whatever he wanted it to be. The reality breaker had gone even further. Captain Anderson and his crew had learned to edit the fundamental constants of the universe itself. They could make gravity stronger or weaker, change the speed of light, or alter the basic rules that held matter together. "How is any of this possible?" Chen asked Reed. "When you're trapped in impossible situations for long enough, you learn to think in impossible ways," Reed replied. Each ship that was lost during the war found itself in a different kind of prison. Some were caught in time loops. Others fell into dimensional pockets. A few got stuck between realities. Reed's image appeared on Chen's main screen. Behind him, she could see his crew working at stations that displayed information in ways that should not have been possible. The thing about humans, Admiral, is that we don't accept being trapped. We find ways out. And when there is no way out, we make one. Each of these ships and crews spent years or decades learning to break the rules that held them prisoner. Chen looked at the reports coming in from across human space. The dimensional tide had appeared in the Centauri system, carrying weapons that could attack targets in parallel universes. The causality loop was dropping out of hyperspace in the Vega system, armed with devices that could make effects happen before their causes. Admiral, I'm getting a priority message from Earth, Torres announced suddenly. Chen felt her heart skip. Earth had been silent for months. Everyone assumed the worst had happened. Put it through. The screen filled with the image of a woman Chen did not recognize. She wore a uniform that looked human but had symbols and decorations that were completely unfamiliar. Admiral Chen, this is Director Rachel Stone of the Terra Defense Initiative. I apologize for the communication blackout, but we've been rather busy down here. Chen stared at the screen. Director, what's the situation on Earth? We feared the worst when you went silent. Stone smiled. Earth is fine, Admiral. Better than fine, actually. We've been using the time to prepare for the next phase of human expansion. Captain Reed's return was the signal we were waiting for. The view behind Stone shifted, showing what looked like a massive construction facility. Chen could see ships being built that dwarfed anything she had ever imagined. Some looked like cities in space. Others seemed to be made of pure energy held in impossible shapes. Admiral, Earth didn't fall during the war, Stone explained. We hid it. The entire planet and star system have been existing in a pocket dimension, while our best minds worked on technologies that would ensure humanity's survival. Chen felt dizzy. You hid the entire Earth? We learned early in the war that fighting the Kethvar by their rules was a losing strategy. So we decided to write new rules. The ships that were lost during the conflict were not accidents. They were sent to explore different aspects of what was possible. Stone gestured to the construction facility behind her. Each returning ship brought back knowledge of how to break different universal laws. We've been using that knowledge to build vessels that can ensure humanity never faces extinction again. The communication screen split to show multiple feeds from across human space. Chen saw ships emerging from hiding places she had never known existed. The mathematical certainty phased into normal space near Alpha Centauri, its hull covered in equations that rewrote themselves constantly. The paradox engine appeared in the Sol system itself, somehow existing in the same space as three other ships without any of them colliding. Admiral, the Kethvar thought they were fighting a war of extinction against humanity, Reed said. What they were really doing was giving us the motivation to become something new, something that doesn't have to worry about extinction because we've learned to rewrite the rules that make extinction possible. Chen looked at her tactical displays. The readings were showing impossible things. Ships that were larger inside than outside. Vessels that moved faster by going slower. Weapons that became more powerful when they missed their targets. How many ships are we talking about? Chen asked. Stone and Reed exchanged a look that Chen could not interpret. Admiral, Stone said carefully, we stopped counting at around 1,000. The exact number depends on how you define ship, and whether you count vessels that exist in multiple dimensions as one ship or several. Chen sat down heavily in her command chair. 1,000 impossible ships, each one armed with weapons that could break the laws of physics, each one crewed by humans who had learned to think beyond the normal limits of reality. What happens now? She asked. Reed smiled. Now we finish the war. The Kethvar wanted to prove that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. We're going to show them they were right, but not in the way they expected. On the tactical display, Chen watched as impossible ships moved into formation throughout human space. They were preparing for something big, something that would change everything. The lost fleet had returned, and they had brought the future with them. The Kethvar Emperor Vorthak sat on his crystal throne, looking at reports that made no sense. His greatest fleets had been destroyed by enemies that should not have been able to exist. Ships that could ignore physics. Weapons that attacked, through time itself. Humans who had somehow learned to rewrite reality. "Bring me the War Council," he commanded his aide. "I want answers." The most powerful military minds of the Kethvar Empire gathered in the throne room. Generals who had conquered dozens of worlds stood silent, unable to explain what was happening to their forces. General Zektar, commander of the 3rd Battle Fleet, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, our forces are being defeated by technologies that violate the fundamental laws of the universe. The humans appear to have learned things that should be impossible." Emperor Vorthok's 4 eyes glowed with anger. "Impossible is not an acceptable word in this throne room. Find me solutions." "Your Majesty," another general spoke up. "Perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans. They seem to possess capabilities that exceed our understanding." The Emperor's roar echoed through the vast chamber. "We do not negotiate with inferior species. The humans will be destroyed, even if we have to burn every star in the galaxy to do it." But even as he spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial Palace. The Emperor's personal guard rushed into the throne room, their weapons ready. "Your Majesty, there are ships appearing in our home system," the guard captain announced. "Human ships. They came out of nowhere." On the main viewing screen, the impossible became visible. Human vessels were materializing in the space around the Kethvar homeworld. Ships that looked like they were made of folded space. Vessels that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Craft that appeared to be constructed from crystallized time. Captain Reed's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked calm and confident, the way someone looks when they hold all the winning cards. "Emperor Vorthok, I am Captain Marcus Reed of the Human Defense Force. We need to talk." The Emperor stood from his throne, his massive form towering over his cowering advisors. "Human, you dare to bring your ships to our sacred homeworld? You will be destroyed for this insult." Reed smiled. "Your Majesty, you're still thinking in old terms. Your weapons cannot destroy us. Your defenses cannot stop us. Your fleets cannot defeat us. We're here to discuss the terms of your surrender." The Emperor's rage was terrible to see. "Surrender? The Kethvar Empire has never surrendered to anyone. We will fight until every star burns cold." "That's exactly the attitude that got you into this mess," Reed replied. "You started this war because you thought humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live. You were right about the dangerous part. You just didn't understand what that meant." Reed gestured, and the view behind him changed to show the interior of his ship. The Emperor could see humans working at stations that displayed information in ways that hurt to look at directly. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. "Your Majesty, we spent 20 years learning how to break the rules you live by. We can rewrite the laws of physics. We can change the past to alter the present. We can make your ships attack themselves across multiple timelines." To prove his point, Reed nodded to someone off-screen. Suddenly, the Kethvar defense platforms around their homeworld began firing at each other. The planetary shields turned inside out, protecting everything except the planet they were supposed to defend. "Stop this," the Emperor roared. "I haven't started yet," Reed replied calmly. "What you're seeing is just a small demonstration. We could make your planet exist only on Tuesdays. We could turn your gravity upside down. We could edit your species out of history entirely." The Emperor looked around at his advisors, but they offered no solutions. "How do you fight an enemy that can change the rules of reality itself?" Reed continued. "But we don't want to destroy you, Your Majesty. We want to teach you something. You said humans were too dangerous to be allowed to spread across the galaxy. What you didn't understand is that making us fight for our survival just made us more dangerous." The viewing screen split to show images from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in every major Kethvar system simultaneously. They moved through space like living things, ignoring obstacles that should have stopped them. Every colony you destroyed taught us something new about survival. Every fleet you defeated showed us another rule we needed to break. Every human life you took made us more determined to find ways to do impossible things. Reed leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. Your Majesty, this war is over. It ended the moment our lost ships started returning. The only question now is whether you want to learn from us or continue fighting a battle you cannot win. The Emperor looked at his tactical displays. His most powerful fleets were scattered across space, either destroyed or running in panic. His homeworld was surrounded by ships that could apparently rewrite reality at will. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Recognition, Reed replied. Acknowledge that human space is sovereign territory. Stop your attacks on our colonies. Begin trade negotiations based on mutual respect instead of conquest. And if we refuse? Reed's smile was cold. Then we'll show you what humans can really do when we stop holding back. We'll make this entire region of space exist according to human rules instead of universal constants. Your ships will only be able to fly if they're built by humans. Your weapons will only fire if humans give them permission. Your empire will exist only because we allow it to. The Emperor stared at the human captain. In his species' long history, no one had ever spoken to a HFY Emperor with such casual confidence. But then, no one had ever possessed the power to back up such words. You would reshape the galaxy itself? Your Majesty, we already have. This conversation is taking place in space where human physics apply instead of universal physics. If you tried to leave this system right now, you'd find that your ships can only travel to destinations that humans approve of. The Emperor felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. How is that possible? We spent 20 years learning that possible and impossible are just words that describe how much you understand about the universe. We understand more than you do. Reed gestured again, and the view changed to show Earth emerging from its dimensional hiding place. The planet looked the same, but it was surrounded by structures that defied description, space stations that existed in 11 dimensions, shipyards that built vessels out of crystallized mathematics, defense platforms that fired concentrated probability. This is humanity's new homeworld, Your Majesty. Not just Earth, but Earth Prime, existing in a pocket of space where we control every fundamental constant. Gravity, time, causality, the speed of light. They all work the way we want them to work. The Emperor sank back onto his throne. His empire, which had seemed so powerful and advanced, was suddenly revealed to be primitive and limited. The humans had not just survived their war of extinction, they had evolved beyond the need to worry about extinction. What happens to my people? He asked quietly. They live, Reed replied. They learn, they adapt, just like we did. The galaxy is big enough for everyone, Your Majesty. It's even bigger when you know how to edit the rules to make more space. Emperor looked around at his advisors one final time. Then he stood and gave the formal bow of surrender that no HFY ruler had ever made before. The HFY Empire accepts your terms, he said with dignity and tact despite defeat. Reed nodded. Welcome to the new galaxy, Your Majesty. I think you're going to find it much more interesting than the old one. As the communication ended, Admiral Chen watched from her ship as the impossible human fleet began to spread throughout the galaxy. They moved like seeds of change, carrying their reality-altering technology to every corner of space. The war was over. Humanity had won, not by defeating their enemies, but by becoming something that made traditional warfare meaningless. They had learned to rewrite the universe itself, turning the very concept of defeat into an impossibility. In the end, the HFY had been right about one thing. Humans were indeed too dangerous to be allowed to spread unchecked across the galaxy. They were so dangerous that they had made the word unchecked lose all meaning. The galaxy would never be the same again.